and welcome back to the Festival of the Unexplained. I hope you're all having a fantastic day and are loving the guests that we've had on the show so far. Now, it just doesn't stop there. We have a massive array of other guests that we want you to keep an eye out for, and some of them may be your favorites and some of them, you know, you may never have heard of, but I'm sure that by the time the festival's finished, you will have a full view of who we've got speaking, and you know, you will understand a little bit more about where these people have come from. My next guest is a correctional officer, and his name is Coleman. Now, Wes is a very good friend of mine. He's also a very good friend of Richard Eastep, who we will be also interviewing. Now, Wes is very much a paranormal investigator, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want him to come on and to also tell us about what he's been up to and where he's been. So, hello, Wes.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Listen, just before we get started, I just wanted to thank you very much for having me. This is an amazing experience, and I'm looking forward to it.
No problem. And thank you so much for lending us your time, because that's, you know, a lot of people in this day and age at the moment with the current climate have got quite a bit of time on their hands, haven't they? But the likes of us who constantly work and, you know, need to work, then we're finding it increasingly difficult, especially at the Halloween time, to find, you know, time to speak to people about their hobbies and about anything else. So how have you been?
I haven't been doing too bad. I mean, with COVID and all, it's certainly altered everything that's going on in our world, and it's a little bit difficult doing the paranormal stuff these days. I mean, there's been a lot of adjustments, but you know, it is what it is. We have to get through it, and we have to be diligent, and we have to do the precautions that they're telling us to do, so we can just, you know, in a year's time or a year and a half's time, maybe this will all blow over, but you know, let's try to do our best.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's what we're all hoping for, aren't we? But you've visited the UK quite a lot, haven't you? Doing some paranormal investigations. Where's your favorite place in the UK to investigate?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know if the viewers know this, but I'm from Canada, so not to be confused with the country down south of us there. There's a lot of locations that I still haven't investigated in England, but there's a lot that I have. Some of my favorites are the Jamaica Inn, the Bodmin Jail. I was lucky enough to investigate a little bit of Aleister Crowley when I was down there the last time, and that was very interesting. But there are so many different, I mean, your history is so much more plentiful than ours, and it seems like you have, and I don't know if history has anything to do with, you know, how a place can be haunted. I mean, we have a very small history, but yet they're still haunting. So
yeah,
but England is, you know, obviously an epic place for me to go.
Yeah, and you've been here quite often, haven't you? So, you know, you're no stranger to traveling across the pond, so to speak.
Absolutely, I've got relatives there too, so that helps as well. So I'll go and visit them. It's yeah, it's beautiful over there. I love it. I love the Cornwall area. I'm more of a country person than I am a city person, so I try to get out to the more rural areas.
So you were supposed to be coming over, weren't you, to the UK to do some further investigations. Has COVID put a bit of a dampener on that?
Well, everything's been canceled. This year I was supposed to come over 2, maybe 3 times. So everything was, you know, kind of thrown away for that. I'm hoping next year, you know, to get over a couple of times and do some investigations with Richard. And but we'll just have to play it by ear. I'm not getting my hopes up, let's put it that way, but I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah, and I think everybody's hoping that they're going to be able to travel at some point again and do the things that they love. So you mentioned Richard there, and obviously I'm speaking with Richard on the festival. So for those of you who obviously don't know Richard Eastep is an author, but he's very good friends with you, isn't he?
Yeah, we developed a friendship a couple of years ago, and it just kind of went from there. I help him in research and go to his investigations for his books.
Mhm.
I can't say enough about the guy. He's really made my dreams come true with respect to books and the paranormal and going to epic locations. It's been a ride, and the guy is an amazing guy. His books are incredible. I mean, if you ever read a Richard Estep book, you're just waiting for the next one.
Yeah, I've obviously I had spinal surgery a couple of weeks ago, and I literally invested in four of his books actually. The Bodmin Jail, the Axe House of Villisca, and a couple of others as well. I'm not going to say one of them because I know you want to kind of introduce your friend who you've got there. No, I'm not creeped out by clowns or anything, but yeah, the John Wayne Gacy book, I've also got that as well, and I was going to read them, but obviously it's the festival's kind of taken over more than anything, and it's great. But you helped investigate the John Wayne Gacy case, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, that was about a year and a half ago now, and it was at the Haunted Hour Theater, it's owned by a gentleman by the name of Robin Terry, who is just an amazing guy. Like, he does so much for the community, and he also owns Ashmore Estates. I don't know if you've heard of that place, but it's
Uh-huh.
also a very epic location as well. But yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to do that, and it was incredible, really, because Richard said like I could bring a guest along, so I was trying to think who I could bring along, and then I kind of thought about it for a while, and then I brought this guy with me.
I bet you had a few fans, didn't you, when you turned up with that?
Yeah, it was, well, we kind of wanted to use it as a bit of a trigger too, right? Because for those of you who don't know, John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer, and his alter ego was a clown.
Hmm.
And he committed some of his crimes while he was dressed as a clown. So we kind of use that as a trigger to see if we had the amazing Jason Anthony, who actually wore the clown's outfit with the clown's head, and it was incredible some of the stuff that was stirred up by just doing that.
Uh-huh. And it's madness as well, because we were talking about John Wayne Gacy and the serial killer case and everything. And I actually stumbled across his house. His house had been remodernized, they were selling it online. And it was
That's
like,
right.
oh my goodness, who would, would you consider buying a haunted, either a place where somebody was murdered?
I would probably not that. I mean, it's a different place now. It's been completely remodeled. It's a brand new house. They demolished the old one. I mean,
Uh-huh.
obviously the bodies were buried underneath that house. But I I would prefer to own an old like asylum or prison or something like that nature rather than a serial killer's house.
Yeah.
Just just my because I'm people might not know this, but I'm empathic, so I probably wouldn't get a lot of sleep. There'd be too much emotion going on inside my head, and it would be just like, yeah, no
No.
thanks.
And you mentioned quite a lot of prisons, and you obviously work in a prison as a correctional officer. How on earth do did you come into the paranormal from that side of things?
Well, that's a great question. I've always had experiences, not necessarily seeing things or having any kind of interaction with things, but from a young age, I've always been interested. The first book I read was called Some Canadian Ghosts by Sheila Hervey when I was like 9 years old, and that really got me into getting interested in things. But more, it was the feelings that I got for places and people when I would go around, and I always denied them because I mean, you can imagine being a correctional officer and being a tough guy. You kind of
Uh-huh.
hide those things, right? And you don't come to terms with them. And as I got older, I realized I had this kind of gift when I started doing some paranormal investigations. I was starting to get genuine feelings from people that weren't with us that really kind of made me think, there's more to this than, just the scientific evidence or the attempt at trying to get scientific evidence. Because when I first started, it was all about the science. And I really wanted to know everything about the empirical evidence regarding an investigation. But as we all know, and as we all grow, you realize that it's not all about just the physical. It's also about some of the things that you experience. So opening the door and letting things come in to a degree. I mean, you have to protect yourself, but just giving yourself the opportunity to experience the feelings and emotions of a place when you're an empath.
Yeah. And it's funny how you mentioned that people, some people in the paranormal field do go on, all the scientific evidence, don't they? But I think personal experiences and the things that we feel and the things that we actually put out there into the atmosphere when we're investigating, especially as empaths and, mediums and things like that, we tend to use our own physical beings, don't we, as our tools, so to speak. So rather than using all of this high technology, ITC, spirit boxes and things like that, would you say that the best form is your own self?
Well, absolutely. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to get away from the equipment and kind of be more focus on everything that's going on around you and using your senses. Because when you're focused too much on the equipment, then you kind of lose a part of, the things that are going on around you. And I found that. So as the years have been, I mean, we still use equipment. We still use like the ghost box and like an Estes session kind of experiment, which has been extremely successful. But the Estes session also gives me the ability to use my empathic skills as well and open it up to the ghost box, which is, I mean, it's a difficult thing, but it's amazing the information and the evidence I've gotten of places that none of this is on Google, none of it, like the owners came up to me and go, yeah, like, how did you know that information? It's not something that's on any kind of public media. And so I found that I initially thought the ghost box was rubbish. And then when I started using it in Estes session, it's opened up a whole new, world to me. So
yeah, the method itself is just it's a great experiment, isn't it? Taking away, somebody's, sensory deprivation and things like that, taking those away from somebody heightens every single other perception and sense. And it's strange, isn't it, when you walk into a building as an empath, you have these enormous feelings of dread, of fear and things like that, but when you take away those senses, you're automatically kind of, I want to say, like transported into a different kind of time, isn't it? It's, you literally, you've got nothing. And it's, for these people who, there are a lot of paranormal investigators who will understand what the Estes method is, but a lot of our viewers quite potentially won't, like the younger generation and these up and coming ones. But, all these methods are very much in tune with yourself, aren't they?
Absolutely. And it's a double blind experiment. So any of the information you receive is, you can't see what you're doing and you can't hear anything because all you're listening to is the ghost box, and it's so loud you can't hear the questions that are being asked. Any of the viewers out there who don't know about the Estes method, please look it up. It's an incredible tool. It's not, to say that obviously there is some subjective influence there from a person like myself. But that being said, there's information I've received that names of people that nobody would even know until you talk to the owner of the place.
Yeah, it's an experiment that I actually quite like an awful lot, because there is, you know, like you say, you can't hear anything because of the spirit box, and you know, people are asking questions, and the spirit box is feeding information, and you don't know what those questions are, and I think that's the beauty of that. But also, I think a lot more paranormal investigators are kind of going back to the old Victorian methods, so just using their own being with dowsing rods, and you know, the likes of, you know, talking boards and things like that. What's your most favorite piece of equipment that you would use?
Okay, well, just to touch on what you just said there about people kind of going back to the old kind of style of, you know, I think before you kind of do paranormal investigation, you have to decide why you're in the field. Like, are you there to try to prove to people that the paranormal exists? So are you doing like recordings? You're doing photographic evidence, which is something you do anyway, but are you trying to prove it to other people, or are you trying to prove it to yourself? So
Mm-hmm.
when people are going back to the old traditional methods of just using their senses and going into a place, to me, that kind of signifies that you're just trying to prove it to yourself, because obviously you can't, if you don't have the equipment or, you know, the photographic evidence, the audio evidence, then you can't prove it to anybody else. But it's what you experience. Like for me, it's all about myself and proving all this stuff to myself. Like you know, if somebody believes me, then that's great. If they don't believe me, that's fine
Yeah.
too. I just put it out there, and people can decide for themselves. I mean, when you get evidence like the Estes method that I've had, you know, it's recorded, but it's also something that's very subjective, because I'm getting messages that maybe somebody else might not. So now regarding your question there, I'll go back to that. My favorite piece of equipment. Um, I think most paranormal investigators will say the best piece of equipment is the recorder for EVPs, because you certainly get a lot of voices, disembodied voices from that can't be explained. Photographic video evidence is very difficult to come by. You can get it, but and we use that as well. But I think the audio recorder is probably the best.
Yeah. And usually when something happens and you've got a voice recorder on an investigation, chances are that the recorder will pick up everything. And
Exactly.
you know, I've sometimes like gone to an investigation, switched my voice recorder on and forgotten that I'd had it, and then something's happened and I've actually caught it, and it's kind of like, wow, I'm so glad that I had that.
And not only that, when we do investigations, we also use more than one. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll have two or three even working at the same time. So when you know, when you do get a piece of evidence, you want to verify on each recorder that, you know, that was heard. Although, you know, sometimes they're too far apart and something may whisper like into it away from the other ones, but it's certainly a good way to prove something.
Yeah, and that's funny you should say that, because you know, I know that Drakelow tunnels, we've investigated there, you know, so many times, and certain things that have happened in those tunnels have been captured by, you know, two voice recorders, but there was a third voice recorder exactly the same as the other two, but nothing was captured on that one. And I just find that fascinating, how the spirit can do, you know, can manipulate that themselves, and just come through on two separate voice recorders on the same frequency, but then nothing on the third one.
Right. And that's the other thing, right? I mean, what are we actually experiencing, and how can it do that, right? Like, I mean, we don't know what we're experiencing. So, you know, maybe there's a way that they can use some recorders and not others. It's you know, we really have no idea what it's all about. We're just, you know, a shot in the dark. And you know, to be honest with you, we're doing what we can as humans to try to figure it out, but I don't even think we're close.
No, I don't think we're close at all. And that kind of, you know, the whole perception of UFOs and aliens and things like that, you know, of things that have excelled over the past probably 30 years. Because when obviously I started in this industry, you know, I'm not getting any younger, but it's, you know, I've seen the paranormal change so much, and obviously you've probably seen it change huge amounts as well throughout your career in the paranormal. What would you say is your biggest change that you've seen?
Change. Well, the biggest change really is, like I always try to separate what you see on TV from the actual kind of what's going on in real life as far as investigations go, because there's a lot of shows out there, and I'm not going to name any, but that really kind of, promote the scary aspect, and it is entertainment. And there's, if that's the approach you have, then that's fine. But an actual paranormal investigator, it's far different than TV. And I think that that whole mix with TV and the actual what we actually do for a living it's not a good thing, because people who are new to the paranormal, who don't really know what it's all about, they've seen the TV shows and they think, oh, this is what we do, or this is how we're going to do a paranormal investigation. But it's not always the way. It's and we do public investigations. I should kind of give a little bit of a brief explanation of my group. My
Yeah.
team is called C.O.P.S. I have 3 guys on my team, and one guy's a researcher. Darren is our tech guy. We also have Chris. He's our researcher and also helps with tech. But these places, like we do a Picton Heights investigation, which is our place that we manage, and it's an old asylum military establishment. And we go there and we do take the public a couple of times a year and kind of show them exactly what a paranormal investigation is all about, like what it's really about, and not, it's not all TV, because people ask questions like, well, why isn't anything happening? Like we came to see something, and it's like, it's not like TV. Sometimes you have to be patient, and sometimes you have to, take your time and open yourself up to it, to see what's actually going on around you, not have expectations, because that's obviously the worst thing to do when you go and have paranormal.
Well, this is what these TV shows kind of promote, though, don't they? They don't actually sit there and tell these people that, in the space of, say, for 10 hours worth of filming, you might just get a small snippet that is able to be used on a TV show. What they don't show you is you sat in the cold, dark, possibly sometimes abandoned buildings where there's no heating and you're freezing cold. They don't show those, those bits, do they? They show all the, the glory and, the entertainment, but they don't show you the actual hard work that goes into it.
Well, exactly. And I mean, you only have a half an hour to get as many ghosts on TV as possible, right? So
yeah, and like they say, the ghosts always come out to play, don't they, on some. But
exactly.
So you obviously is it Picton Heights, did you say? So you manage that facility?
Yes, it's as I said, it's an old military base, and then became an asylum in 1969, and was an asylum for 31 years, and lots of bad things. Like, I refer to it as like a miniature Waverly Hills, because it looks very similar to it. Like, they've got the long hallways with the doorways on either side, and now and again you'll see things, shadows pop their heads out, and we get a lot of EVP stuff there. There's no power or anything in that place. It's completely dead. It's completely dead. But it's a very interesting place. It's 200,000 square feet, so it's so big that you can actually have we have paranormal groups that come in, and we just split them into 3 different groups within their group and go to 3 different locations and have very little contamination.
That's amazing that you have that vast amount of space to work with. So what is the most what's the scariest experience that you've had there?
At the height,
I'm saying this now because you people think correctional officers are tough guys and all the rest of it, but do you get frightened by it?
Frightened is a very it's a term that maybe a correctional officer would I mean, we certainly get apprehensive about a place, or we certainly get feelings that we're a little bit more yeah, just afraid, like as you said, I guess, like for no, like I mean, not to the point where you run out of there, but like I've gotten very sick before in certain locations there that, you know, I wouldn't go the next time I went, I wouldn't get sick. So it's yeah, it's I wouldn't say like we've seen shadow things, and we get more excited than anything.
Yeah.
I worked 18 years on the riot team at work, so that involves a lot of like high adrenaline, excitement. I mean, when you're going into a situation and you don't know what's going on, it kind of makes the person that you are, like either you're afraid and you want to run in the other direction, or you want to, you know, the flight or fright response, right?
Yeah.
You want to go right into it. And so paranormal, doing paranormal investigations similar to that, because when you experience something, you just get like so excited, like, and you get like I grin from ear to ear. I like it so much, but I like to be scared, you know, like I go on roller coasters and I laugh my butt off because it's scaring the hell out of me, but I that's my reaction as I laugh, you know. So
yeah. And I think, do you know what? I remember, you know, like going to Alton Towers and the theme parks in America and everywhere. And I think as I've gotten older, I'm kind of more, oh, I don't want to be doing this no more. I don't think I should go on this. And I see the fear factor in it. But, you know, I used to love things like that when I was growing up as a kid. I'd be like, the higher the better, you know, the faster the better. And it kind of, now I'm like, oh, don't do that. You know, you might hurt yourself. Or, well, I just think that's just the maternal instinct kind of coming out. But yeah, I'm still.
For me, it's the equilibrium thing, you know, like now I'm starting to get more sick when I go on rides, even though I like them, I just get that queasiness, and it's just not the same.
It's like those waltzers that go round and round. Oh, I don't think I could ever go on another one of those. I think I went on one about 5 years ago, and I was throwing up, and I was so sick. It was like, no, never again. So
I hear you.
So they can keep that, but spirits spirits can affect you in a certain way that do make you feel sick, and you know, all of that. How do you find that? Obviously, I want to word this in a better way. How do you find spirits affect you? Do they make you sick? Do they, you know, what would they do to you?
They can, and they have. Definitely at the Heights, I told you a couple of times that's happened to me. I've been ill there, just from going into a certain location. It's almost like they don't want you there. That's the feeling I get. And you go in there and they're like, okay, you know, you need to get out of here. We don't want you in here. And then you get that feeling where you're going to be ill, and physically I'm ill.
Yeah.
And the other place that I experienced that was with Richard Estep at the Alistair Crowley Cottage down in Cornwall. And nobody else, our guide was with us, Gemma, and she showed us basically where it was, and the building and the structure. She took us up onto the hill where it's located. And I got into the house, and then I started going up. There's an attic part of the house. Do you call it an attic in England?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going up into the attic, and I got like 3 or 4 steps up, and it just came over me like an extreme illness. Like I was so sick. I came down the ladder, went outside, and I just started puking violently. And then I kind of took a rest. We kind of walked around for a half an hour, came back, and I toured the bottom part of the house, no problem. But as soon as I got up to that top level, I started getting sick. And Richard, he'll tell you he has no extra ability at all. He says he's just purely in the scientific, but he uses people like me for that kind of thing. And he never got any kind of a feeling at all. And then our guide that was with us, Gemma, felt like there was like it was like a vortex. It was like a whirlpool. And so that could have been why I was feeling ill, was just that kind of the circular thing.
Yeah, and it's quite possible if there is a vortex in there as well, it probably would make you feel like that. And obviously Richard's very scientific, like you said, and possibly more skeptical as well, isn't he? Because he goes into places and, you know, to be skeptical and to say that not everything's paranormal is a great well, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, you have to be that way. I mean, I shouldn't say you have to be that way, but I think that's a good way to approach things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much the same. The feelings that I get that I've been kind of more focusing on in the later years, they're very subjective. You know, I can't tell him, you know, this is what's happening here. All I can say is this is what I feel, and
Mm-hmm.
it's up to him or any of the others or the people that read the books to decide if, you know, if that's what I'm actually feeling.
Yeah. So what experiences have you had whilst you've been investigating in the UK? What's your most memorable one?
Well, that's a great question. I love Bodmin Jail. It's Kirsten is the manager of Bodmin Jail, Kirsten Honey, and she does an amazing job. As you know, it's really changed now. Bodmin Jail, they've made it kind of more into a haunted attraction. You can actually stay there. When we went there, that was kind of in the works. They hadn't finished building it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that to me, because of the history, I'm really into the history of places too. I really, and obviously being a correctional officer, I've got a lot more interested in it as well, right? And when I go as a correctional officer to an old prison, one of two things can happen. The first thing is that the activity can just go off the charts. Like they don't want me there. Like they'll do everything they can to get me out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Or the second thing that'll happen is it'll be dead silent again,
Mm-hmm.
dead silent. But it's either one or the other. There's no in between. And when it's silent, it's almost like, you know, they're afraid because there's a corrections officer there. And that actually happened the very first night when I was at Bodmin. It was Kirsten will tell you, like it was so quiet. Like you know, not like she's so used to all this interaction, and when I was there, there's nothing. So it's and of course, you know, we're talking the 1700s when this place was, you know, quite active as a real facility, and the guards back then, they weren't like me. They were hard asses, so to speak. Like they really were hard on the inmates, and you know, they were almost just as bad as the inmates from what I've read.
Yeah, well, Ruthin Jail is one of my favourite places to investigate, and that was, you know, part of the Pentonville prisons, and it's the only one that's still standing now, and it houses the Welsh National Records. And I had the pleasure of investigating that place back in 2017, and I will never forget it. It was, you know, I caught on my camera a full-bodied apparition of a guard, and he was stood at the back of the group photograph that I took. Now, it wasn't until I'd spoken to the two girls in the shop who were there on the evening, and I said, "Oh, can you tell me if there was a guard that was murdered at all in this prison?" Because obviously, myself being a medium, don't go and you know, don't research anything before I go into somewhere. And she said, "Oh yes, there was." And I said, "Can you possibly tell me if he was around about," I say, "I want to say about 6'1", 6'2". And she said, "Yes, he was." And I said, "Does this look like him?" And she turned, and I literally zoomed in on the picture, and she said, "Oh my God, you can see his hat, you could see his ears, you could see his mustache." She said, "You could see like the outlines of his features and how tall he was, even though he was at the back of the group." And that, to this day, I absolutely love that prison. And, you know, anybody who says that they've never investigated there, I honestly, get yourselves to Ruthin Jail. Any group who's hosting, get yourselves there, because it's a fantastic night.
Well, I'll definitely take note of that. One of the places that is on my bucket list is Shepton Mallet. And that's planned for next year, as is Drakelow. So I'm kind of hoping that you know, everything kind of works out, but you know what it's like. The world today is just so crazy. So
yeah, well, we have Shrewsbury as well, so that's known as the Dana prison. We've got that in September of next year, as well as Shepton Mallet. I think we've got that probably the month earlier. But yeah, we've had to move every single event that we've had for this year all the way through to next year now. So next year is going to be ultra busy for everybody, I think, within this industry.
Well, one of the other prisons that I've investigated was the Covenanters prison in Edinburgh.
Uh-huh.
And that was an amazing location as well. I highly recommend if you get a chance to get up there to do that place as well. It's Edinburgh is my favorite city in the world, so I've been investigating there quite a few times, and I just love the city. It's a
Mhm.
part of my heart. Like it's crazy. I can't explain it, but
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed because I booked something for my partner and I to go to Edinburgh for the weekend, and unfortunately, as COVID's come around on a second wave, we're not able to go. But I did book the Vaults tour for us to go to, because he's not interested in the paranormal. He's very straight-laced, straight down the line. But I kind of wanted to give him just a little bit of a snippet on what it's like when you're down in these vaults and you're walking underneath the streets of Edinburgh, and looking at that. Did you visit the vaults when you've been there?
yes, investigated the vaults as well with Karen Besant from
Oh yeah,
um,
Karen. I know Karen.
Karen, and it was incredible. That was back in, I'm going to say 2016. I was there,
Mhm.
but an incredible place. But I suggest a place you take him rather than the vaults is Mary King's Close, because I think he would really appreciate that place more, because there's more of a history, and they've kind of left it the way they found it. So there's
Yeah.
like the old shops in there, and again, extremely haunted. I was very fortunate to I kind of paid off the manager there one night that I was in Edinburgh, and I said, listen, what I was kind of kidding. I was saying, like, how much would it cost to stay in here for the night? Like, you just kind of turn a blind eye, you leave, and then you come back in the morning. And I thought he was going to, say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he says, how about 500 pounds? And I said, well, it's just me. I can't, like, in our exchange rate, our Canadian dollar is terrible. So it would be just like 500 pounds is expensive anyway. But anyway,
Mhm.
I got him down to 50 pounds, and I stayed there from 7 at night until 2 in the morning. And I was
Wow.
by myself. And I only had one piece of equipment with me, because I didn't initially go there that specific time to investigate. So, which was a millimeter. So, again, it was just, that whole being at a location by yourself. You certainly have a lot of expectations, and you have to
Mhm.
be really careful with that. But I heard a lot of things, I felt a lot of things, and it was an incredible experience. And I know I'm so fortunate to be able to have done that. Like, it's
That's
definitely,
amazing. That's awe-inspiring though, isn't it? Especially being able to stay in Mary King's Close on your own. That's just phenomenal. You never hear of that nowadays.
no, 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 not at all. But take him there, like, I'm sure he would. Just the whole idea of walking down and seeing a street that was there 300 years ago that's been completely preserved. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, he does like history anyway. So, but we're gonna have to probably reschedule, because it was, going for near Christmas with all the Christmas markets and everything. But we'll go there some other time, I think.
Yeah, good
But yeah,
idea.
so you've got a love of the prisons here in the UK. Obviously you've said you've never investigated Shepton Mallet.
No, I haven't. Again, scheduled for next year. It's been on my bucket list for 5, 6 years when I found out it was closing, and
Mhm.
I was so excited about getting there. Of course, someone like me, before I met Richard, to be able to go to a location like that, I would need to go with like 25 other people to be able to really get an idea of what it's all about. But
Mhm.
when you do investigations, you want to try to limit it to as minimum amount of people as possible, right? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be able to do that for at least a night, or there. I think we're there for 4 nights. So
That's amazing in itself, and I'm sure you'll have so many experiences there anyway. And obviously, doing your job, then I think they'll either come out for you, like you say, or they'll stay hidden. But I know Karen from obviously from the festival, she's investigated there previously on a number of occasions, and they've had some phenomenal experiences there. So good luck with that one for next year.
well, I'll definitely have to, talk to her about it and see how she enjoyed it.
Yeah, she's absolutely, she loves anything like that. So any, and I think listening to other people's experiences and what they've, what they've had. So like Bodmin Jail, I absolutely love Bodmin Jail as well. Just walked around during the day and still had experiences during the day of like you say, feelings and things like that. But, there are plenty of places as well that, in Canada that people necessarily don't know about, do they?
No, it's we're kind of like the forgotten colony, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But no, there is definitely a lot of history here. Canada was founded in I think around the 1500s. Sorry, of Canadian history, but by Jacques Cartier. But there is a lot of old military establishments. The War of 1812. We have a big fort near us called Old Fort Henry, which was never seen active duty during the War of 1812, but there have been deaths there that, and it's known as a paranormal hotspot in Ontario, Canada. So there is a lot of history. There's a lot, especially Quebec, the eastern part of Canada, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
We have different places in Nova Scotia. There's Titanics, or some of the people that died off the Titanic were buried in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That area is that graveyard has seen a lot of different things happen. So yeah, the history's there. And again, we kind of come back to that kind of age-old question: does history really matter, or can any place be haunted after like 10 years? So there's a lot of great I implore you to come to Canada. I'll be your host.
I know. I think, doing this festival, I've met so many wonderful people, and, the offers of, come here and we'll investigate here with you. I've just been phenomenal, really, for me, because, I'm just a little, just a small town. I live in the countryside, and, I enjoy it. I've done a couple of TV things, but, now knowing what I know and, coming out there and all these people saying, come and see us, come and do this, come and do, I'm like, I think I need to fill my diary for next year, but I'm trying to talk Mark into going on a paranormal road trip. So.
Well, good luck with that. I know, like a couple of years ago, weren't you down by Detroit or somewhere? And
actually, yeah, it was Christmas time, so I went to see my cousin over in Ohio, and then went to see a really good friend of mine, Todd Bonner from Detroit Paranormal Expeditions, and we went and investigated the Eloise Asylum, which absolute phenomenal place, unbelievable. And doing a walk around there with Todd, actually thought that there was somebody inside the building at the time, and he went off with another gentleman looking for these so-called intruders, and I was left with Joe Posey and his wife Tonya, and their daughter Marley as well, and a couple of other people. And I think they were just amazed, because I'd never been to the asylum, and I didn't read up anything to do with it before I went. And the weirdest thing and I speak about this all the time because I just find it fascinating, but I'd had a dream for about 2 weeks before I went. One, I'd lost my passport because I moved house in and amongst before I went, so I was panicking that my passport wasn't going to arrive in time. But this recurring dream that I had was a staircase, but it was so out of the ordinary. It wasn't supposed to be there. It looked like it wasn't supposed to be there. It was like a staircase that you would find in a family home, but although it had a door at the bottom and a door at the top, and I said it's blue and orange walls, and I said I can't. I said I don't know why I've been seeing this, but the gentleman that said this to me was named Robert, and he showed himself to me, and he was a very well-to-do gentleman, slicked over dark hair, very, very doctor-like. That's kind of how I described him. And then all of a sudden, I was doing a walk around, and I was basically picking up everything from this building. And I got to the bottom, and I remember saying to Joe Posey, can you tell me if there is a staircase? And I described this staircase, and literally out of nowhere, this voice in the back of my ear said, I told you that. And I did my whoa and literally jumped out of my skin. And
So,
it was that prime voice recording moment that I recorded it. And I said to everybody, I have my voice recorder on. Do you want to listen to it? And they couldn't believe it because they didn't hear it, but I did. And that place was, honestly, it was off the scale. And then I went to the historical village where Brenda, lovingly looks after the history and some of the artifacts from there. And she gave me a book and she said, please take it with you. You've been to the asylum, you've seen how it runs. And it was really funny because when I'm listening back, because I didn't really listen to the voice recordings, but when I've listened back to the names that I picked up, the names were in this book. And I looked at a photograph and I instantly recognized this gentleman. And when I looked at his name was Robert, and he was one of the doctors at the hospital at the time. So that was just awe-inspiring. And I think, that just sends shivers down my spine each time I talk about it. But that is probably one of my memorable moments in Detroit when I visited. But I want to get over a bit more, I think. And, having family over in, America kind of helps with that. But obviously I want to bring Mark across and introduce him to some certain bits and pieces.
Oh yeah. Well, the next time, if you're ever in Detroit, go a little south to Ohio, and the Ohio State Reformatory is there. It's an old prison that was made in the late 1800s, and that's where they filmed The Shawshank Redemption, the movie.
Right.
And we investigated there as our C.O.P.S team, and we had just incredible results. I don't know, do we have time to go through them, or can I?
Yeah, of course we do. Yeah.
The one specific one that stands out is there's an inmate. His name was inmate Lockhart, not Lockwood, Lockhart, and he was going up for parole in 1960, and he was denied his parole, and he got very, very upset, and he worked in the paint shop, and he got some paint thinner and hit it somehow and brought it up to his cell. And during dinner time, he didn't go to dinner. He stayed in his cell, and he covered himself with the paint thinner and lit himself on fire. Wow. And apparently the heat was felt 4 or 5 cells all the way down. That's how the burn was so strong. It just incinerated him. And the reason why I know that is there was an interview with his cell, the guy that was in the cell beside him. Mm-hmm. His last name was Fly, actually. And he described everything that happened. And when we went to investigate his cell, we went inside his cell, started doing an investigation, started talking. We had our EMF equipment. Nothing was going on. It was quiet. We're like, hey, this is really weird. Then all of a sudden on my audio, I'm getting crackling noises, like it's a fire, like there's a crackling, and then the smell of like burning flesh. And I'm like, this just came out of nowhere, right? This stuff is happening, and other people are experiencing the same thing. But we're trying to get some sort of communication as to what's going on here, what's happening. But we did realize that one of the things as a correctional officer is that you realize is that you never go into their space unless you are going in to search their cell or something like that. That's the one dignity they have, is having their own space. Mm-hmm. So we thought, okay, we're going to step out of the cell, we're going to walk down a little bit, and we're going to start asking yes or no questions. We had the REM pod in the cell, and we would ask yes or no questions, and the REM pod would go off for yes, and then for no, it would be silent. Mm-hmm. So we'd ask a question, it'd be yes, and then it would be like blaring like pretty good for like a couple of seconds, maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds. And then we'd say, okay, shut it off right now. And then it would shut off. And then we'd ask another question, it would start blaring again. And every one of our responses, it would react to, which was just incredible. And you can actually see that on our webpage. I shouldn't say our webpage, our Facebook page. Mm-hmm. We have the video of that on there of us asking the questions and getting the responses, our C.O.P.S Facebook page. So it was really, that to me was pretty incredible, for sure.
Yeah. And it's great though that you can have that validated by other people as well, isn't it? It's like we go back to the personal experiences. And if those people have had those personal experiences of that smell, and I mean that smell must have been horrific anyway, but just hearing the crackling of the flames and the smell itself is enough to invoke, the memories of yesteryear, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And the thing about that investigation is because there's only three of us, we have, this place is a massive place. So we had another team with us called C.O.P.S, Canadian Haunting and Paranormal Society. Dave Gibb is the manager of that group, and he came with us. So his people actually heard it and experienced it too. So it was one of those, shake your head moments and be thankful that you're, doing this kind of work.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Wes? When obviously we know that you're coming to the UK next year. What's happening next for you? Are you here on, just paranormal investigations?
Well, there's so much tentative stuff going on. It's like we were supposed to go in February. I don't think that's looking good at this point. It's just going to be too soon. May is be going to Shepton Mallet in May, and then we are going to be doing a run of the North, I think, in the beginning part of August, the northern part of England, and so I'm not really. I kind of leave all that up to Richard, and he just invites me if he wants me to come. Sometimes he's like, "No, I don't want that big lug with me." So
yeah. Well, that's really good though that he does take you along, and I know you're great friends anyway. So the run of the north of England then. So what are you hoping to experience in the north of England?
Well, just I don't really know the locations, to be honest with you at this point. It's just some of the and when I say north of England, north of England to you may not be north; it may be more central. But because I mean, obviously, I don't know the geography as well as you guys do. But around the Nottingham area, I guess that's more central, isn't it? Nottingham.
Yeah, that's more central. So like the northern areas are more like your Newcastle. They are more of your East Drive type places. So the Pontefract area and any further way up like Newcastle and places like that. So usually Nottingham is round about the Midlands. It's very central, but there's so much more history there as well. And I mean, you say you like prisons and things like that. They have the galleries of justice, which is obviously the courtrooms and the caves that are underneath that. There's some amazing places there as well, and obviously the cells inside the galleries of justice is an experience in itself as well. But there is so many different places to investigate in and around the north of England, which if you ever get the chance to, then definitely do, because I'm in North Wales and literally down the road is the Ruthin jail, which I was talking about, which is about 20 minutes away. It's not far at all, and it's probably one of my favorite locations.
Right. Well, and I noticed another presenter you have is Richard Felix. He and I have been talking, and he really wants me to come to the Derby Dell, right? So I mean, that would be perfect, right? Have a correctional officer there. So
Richard Felix is a lovely man, and we have him as one of our speakers, and he's looked after that place for a long time, and there is activity happening in Derby Jail all the time. So he is probably very knowledgeable about the Derby Jail, and he's doing a tour for us over the course of the weekend, which is great for people who've never been to it, don't know what it looks like. So we are very thankful to Richard for doing that for us.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's so funny, and love his sense of humor, and he knows so much about history. It's incredible. Like especially the area that he's in there. It's phenomenal how much he knows. And there was a Canadian inmate that was actually in his prison, and he gave me a call. He said, "Listen, can you do some research for me on this guy?" He was from Manitoba, but that's the other thing. A lot of people don't really grasp how big our country is. So Manitoba to us is like going to Italy for you, you know, like it's so far away. So you can just do what you can do online, but it's a really cool place, and I look forward to getting there someday.
Yeah, and you will, and hopefully COVID will, you know, kind of do one and just leave everybody alone, and hopefully, you know, the world will get back to some sort of normality very soon, hopefully, because you know,
let's hope. And the other thing is Richard Felix is also he's going to be partnering up with Richard a step 2 in one of his books. I can't tell you the details of that right now, but just thought I'd throw that out there for.
Well, I'll be questioning him about that then when I speak to him. So we might get some.
I think you guys are talking soon, aren't you?
Yeah, we are talking very soon. So, but on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me. And it's been brilliant listening to your stories about Picton Heights. You know, it's fantastic that you do what you do, and it's nice to know that you come over to the UK quite often as well. So, you know, maybe next year you should come to the north for a cup of tea, I think.
Well, that would be lovely. I mean, we haven't really met in person, right? So since you kind of sloughed me off the last time you were in Detroit, I guess maybe we'll have to.
Yeah, and one day I'll probably, well, hopefully Mark and I will get to Canada at some point, or, you know, we've got this huge, you know, all these friends all over now, and it is really nice, and I'm very thankful. You know, I do have friends all over the globe, and we all share a common interest, and it's brilliant. And you know, this event is actually for everybody, and I'm so glad that we put this together, and it being free as well. I just think it's, you know, it's fantastic.
Well, just definitely let me know, and like, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real privilege. I just want to say hi to everybody out there that's listening, and thanks for, you know, watching. I love England, and Scotland is like a second home to me, and most of my family's from Scotland. So Richard and I at some point are gonna work our way up there, hopefully someday, to do some work up there. So but thank you very much, and I hope everybody has the most amazing Halloween, and or Guy Fawkes Day, I guess, is what you would have over there. I guess you have Halloween too, right?
We have Halloween. It's becoming more and more popular now over here. We're taking the American stance on it now. So, you know, we decorate all the gardens, all the houses and everything now. And it's kind of taken over from bonfire night, or Guy Fawkes night, as they say. You know, we still have, you know, the fireworks and things, but that Halloween is much more celebrated these days. But where can our viewers find your Facebook page?
Well, if you just look up C.O.P.S, this is our logo here. As soon as you put in C.O.P.S, Correctional Officers Paranormal Society, it should come up. And just, yeah, like our page. You can see some of the things that I've talked about today. Some of our investigations are on there. And that would be amazing. If you come and like us, I would certainly appreciate that.
No problem. But thank you again for coming on and speaking to us. So, and with that, it's just now time for our next guest, and we hope that you're enjoying the festival so far. But stay tuned, because we've got more and more fantastic guests coming up. So it's a goodbye from me, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.